Hello, sawubona mbukeli. Sasifikile thina nohlelo oluthanda kakhulu Yilungelo Lakho. It's your right. Now this is a live broadcast here on SABC 1 Mzansi for sure. Usefikile kumajali enibingelela ethi nje sondelani ngoba kuningi esiniphathele khona. Njengenjalo ke mbukeli ekuhambeni kwesikhathi sizonivulela phela izingcingo. Usithinte la ku-011-714-6918 noma 714-6919. Our email address is consumer@sabc.co.za. Ungasithola futhi na ku Facebook noma ku Twitter. Ithini indaba yethu namhlanje? It's often said that in this world, nothing is as certain as death and taxes. Now, while death might seem a scary prospect, taxes should not be. Well, that is why the South African Revenue Services is once again going all out to help each taxpayer to be at ease with the filing of their income tax returns this time around. Now, while SARS will be kept busy during this tax season, another office, that is of the tax Ombudsman, will also be inundated with the inevitable complaints. So, in our show today, we bring both these offices closer to you so that you can understand exactly what it is they do and how they can be of service to you, the viewer. Naku abakushoyo. And to do just that, masamukele Adv Eric Mkhawane, yena-ke osesimjwayele kulolu hlelo ngalesi sikhathi salonyaka, yena kubuya kwihhovisi lomxazululi wezinkinga zokukhokhwa kwentela phecelezi Tax Ombudsman's Office, kanye no Mr. Mark Kingon ovela kwa SARS, the South African Revenue Services. Gentlemen, a very good afternoon to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Good afternoon.
All right, who should we start with? Mark, let's start with you. Please tell us a bit more about your office.
Well, the South African Revenue Service, I would presume you're referring to. Yes, well,
yes.
we tasked to collect taxes. And obviously, people might feel bad about the tax man, but we are here not to collect more taxes than due and not less. So we are simply here to do what is right and collect the exact amount of taxes due. Now, at this time of year, we obviously are very busy, as you indicated earlier.
Yes.
But this is a time for our citizens, our individual taxpayers, to come submit tax returns, which basically looks at the last year's return, which is up until 28th of February this year, and do a reconciliation. If too much tax was paid from your salary, tax deducted by your employer, or too little, then there's a time for reconciliation. You either get a refund or you have to pay in. Very interestingly, we paid back last year about 15 billion rands worth of refunds to individuals, and it's about 60% of people actually got refunds last year. So it's actually more people getting refunds than not getting refunds, having to pay in. But not everybody gets a refund before people get too happy.
We'll get straight into that in a moment, Mark, but those are good news. Babu Eric, osichazele kabanzi nina nixazulula inkinga emalana nabantu abacomplainayo mayelana nokuthi mhlambe bathathelwe imali enkulu noma encane. Kwenzakalani e-office leni?
Yes, our office really looks at, once you're done with the taxman, or the taxman has not given you the kind of service that you're supposed to get, or they did not follow the right procedures, or you have administrative issues, and you have a complaint, then you raise that complaint with us. So we are there to try to protect taxpayers, or to protect their rights in the first place, and in some instances, obviously, to mediate between the taxpayer and SARS.
And SARS.
Yes.
Mark, maybe let's start here. A lot of people still don't understand. They see that 20 extra cents of VAT and everything else when they buy something. But what really is tax collected for?
Well, tax is the government's means of funding various infrastructure. So whether it be the development of schools or hospitals, roads, places paying, for instance, my salary, part of it. But there's lots of infrastructure that is being provided. It gives government the ability. We have to raise funds to be able to do it. And so this coming year, we are raising, 1.175 trillion rand. So it's a heck of a lot of money. And that's our role, is to enable government to have the resources to do what is needed to serve our society.
And how is tax determined? I mean, who decides, all right, this person, I'm going to tax that much, Mark,
Well,
please?
ultimately, it's Parliament. So Parliament has got the right to pass legislation. We simply, as South African Revenue Service, implement legislation.
Okay.
So Parliament decides, yes, VAT is set at 14%. Yes, individuals' tax rate runs from 0% up to 41%. Trusts have got another rate, and companies going up to 28%. That's Parliament's decision. We simply implement that legislation.
But Eric, I mean, you spoke about the fact that a lot of people come to your offices with a lot of complaints. Do you think that they do understand there's enough education around what tax is being collected for?
Well, it's a mixed basket, I must say. There are people who do understand what the tax is collected for, and there are those, obviously, who don't understand. And, it takes a lot of education, a lot of telling people. We do still get queries which would be best answered by SARS, for example. Why do I get taxed so much, and all those kind of things. So, and what we do give an explanation, to them. In instances where we may not have answers, we may direct them to SARS.
Let's direct them to
SARS. But I think very importantly, there are some people who do need to have more education.
Yes,
and we are always on the road to try and educate. There are a group, and I think Eric would agree with me, who simply don't want to know. And they are the people who would want to stay outside the net and pay as little as possible. Now, I know that from the Ombuds side and our side, we just want to get people to pay what is right.
Absolutely.
And yes, there are people that the Ombud refers to us where we need to engage more, to educate them more, to tell them what's the purpose of this part or that part. And law is complex, and procedures for dispute resolution, when you get into a problem, people don't easily understand that. We always need to do more, and we do acknowledge that, and we are trying to do more and more. Whether we'll ever get to the perfect place that we've done enough, I don't think so. But we've also got to get the people who are not paying taxes, who simply do not submit returns. We get time and time again, we've got people who are wealthy people who just decide to ignore us, and we have penalties which we are applying in that regard. And we are taking a firm line with people who are non-compliant.
But Eric, what are some of the common complaints that you get as the tax ombuds?
Well, you get complaints such as, I've got my refund, SARS is not paying, or there's a delay in the payment of the refund. I've written to SARS, I have not received any response from SARS, or I've objected to the assessment. It's taken so months, I haven't heard from them. So those are, it's a whole lot of complaints, different kind of complaints.
And how do you deal with them? I mean, let's talk about, right from the start. When should a person realize that, I need to take this up with the Ombudsman? Well,
I think for education purposes, it's actually very important. We don't look, we're not the office of the first, we're not the office of first call.
Okay.
It meaning that obviously a person must have raised the issue with SARS. To give SARS an opportunity to look into it, and where SARS has failed, and then, only then the issue can come to us. But it's not all the complaints that are like that. Some complaints are so urgent, and a taxpayer may be facing some hardships. They may need to get an answer speedily or quickly. So by the time they raise an issue with SARS and then only come back to us, a lot of damage may have happened. So under those circumstances, the law allows them to approach our office directly. But they need to tell us their circumstances so that we can assist them.
Maybe, Alicia, could we elaborate on this? Because I think it's an important thing.
The
Ombuds fulfills their role, and they bring complaints to us, which we then handle. And actually, we wouldn't like the Ombud to get work because we want to deal with the people's concerns up front. It's not that we're trying to be difficult. It's the less work they get, the better we're doing, and that's what they want to achieve. So the first port of call is obviously your local SARS branch or the SARS contact centre. And I think it's important we I don't know if it's possible to flash up the number, but our contact centre is 0800 00 7277. That number is our contact centre number.
We do have it. We've
so
got it on
that
the
would be
screen,
important that people be aware of that. If they go to the branch and they do not get satisfactory help, what Eric says, there are urgent cases, and we understand they've got fully within their rights to go to the Ombudsman and ask them for help. And we're sympathetic and we engage very closely to try and resolve those matters. But the next step is to lay a complaint with SARS if you are not getting satisfactory service. We have a complaints mechanism. You can complain online on e-filing. If you are registered on e-filing, you can complain at a branch or you can complain at the contact centre. We don't do that in time. The recourse is correctly so that it be to the Ombudsman. And we want to work together with the Ombudsman to make sure we give clients a good service. I come back to the issue, we don't want people to overpay or underpay their taxes. We want them simply to do what is right. But the complexities of law do give rise to some problems and challenges.
Yo, Mark, I wanted to ask you what kind of problems, as but Eric, they had stated to us what kind of problems they deal with, but we'll get into that after the break. Welcome back. Mbukela ukhumbuleke ukuthi izingcingo zethu sezivuliwe manje. Ungabamba iqhaza edabeni lethu lanamhlanje elimayelana nokuthi phela wena mhlambe mangabe unenkinga nokuthi wazi futhi ukuthi i-tax intela uyikhokhela kanjani, usishayele la ucingo ku 0117146918 noma 714691. Ungasithumela nembono yenu kwi-email yethu ku consumer@sabc.co.za. Alternatively, visit us on Facebook and on Twitter. Mark, maybe also just elaborate. I think people would like to hear from SARS. I mean, what are some of the basic complaints that you can easily resolve that don't necessarily have to go to the Ombudsman?
The key thing relates to submission of documents. I think probably if there was one thing, obviously, firstly, the people want their refund quickly.
Absolutely.
That's probably the first thing. And generally speaking, if you are subject to audit, it does take a bit of time for that to be done. But the key issue is submit all the required documents to SARS. So people fail in that regard. I think if there was one item I would like to harp on is do that. Ensure that you are claiming accurately and submitting your return accurately as possible. Because don't go and overclaim deductions or under-declare your income, and make sure you've got the necessary proof. If you don't, then there might be a lengthy delay in resolving that and giving rise for the need for further interventions.
Gentlemen, look, there's a big scenario here. I mean, there's those people that have to obviously submit and go claim for tax. And there's others like us who don't have a choice. We get taxed whether we like it or not. Who really gets taxed? And how do you then submit your tax returns? Who wants to explain that to us?
You want to kick off for myself?
Well, okay. Mark, the stage is yours.
To submit the tax returns, who must? Or
who must?
Maybe let's just first say that employees, such as myself, I work for an organisation, they deduct pay as you earn. And that's the legislatively mandated framework. They deduct the tax. You probably have a tax deducted from your remuneration.
Yes.
Now, that's the first step. The second step, when I have to submit a return, or who doesn't have to submit a return. I think let's start, if I may, Alicia, with people who don't have to submit. If I've only got one salary, and let's say I only work for the SABC.
And you're getting how much, Mark?
And I'm earning less than 350,000 Rand, and I don't want to claim any medical costs in addition, or retirement annuities, and I've got no car allowance. For those checks in place, and it's less than 350, I don't have to file a return.
Okay.
If you do have, though, for instance, a retirement annuity or a medical cost which were high in the year, then I can submit a tax return. So that's the level, the 350.
Okay.
But just very importantly, that doesn't mean you don't pay tax if you're less than 350. That is the submission of tax returns. So a person who earns, and I'll just give you the figures, a tax threshold for a person below the age of 65 is 73,650. If I earn less than that, there is no tax liability for a full year.
Okay.
So just to give context, there's two thresholds. One, how much when you start paying tax, and another for when you submit a return. That's the one. The other type of person who must submit a return is a person who's got a business. I have a little property I rent out, or I've got a little spaza shop, I've got a business. Technically speaking, I should be registered, and I should be submitting tax returns on that income.
Anything you want to add there, Eric?
Well, I think it's very critical that people understand when to, even the date for that matter, the fact that they have to And I think one emphasis, in regard to the supporting documents, very critical that, when they do, they make sure that, those supporting documents are available. But yeah, I think you summed it very well in terms of the figures.
But if I can just link it into the Ombudsman, the complaints that we do get is when, for instance, you do not submit the supporting documents to us, we add back the expenses which you've claimed, and now you want to rectify that, and that's where it gets a bit tricky because there's legal steps. And I think Eric will probably say, well, we need to do more education in that regard, and I would agree. But that is often some of the complaints which end up with the tax ombudsman, where a dispute has to be filed and we don't accept it because it's too late, and there's various steps in that process.
Mark, let's talk about that. I mean, specifically for those people that have to submit their claims. I mean, I'm sure they don't know how the process works in terms of when and how. Do you need a professional to actually do that on your behalf? How would it work?
For the vast majority of people who are just a salaried person, and I think it's very important that we just say at our branch operations, we have our service agents who will assist a person.
Okay.
So if you bring all your documents, they are
What documents are these, Mark?
So we're talking your IOP5, your certificate from your employer, that's the most important. If you're wanting to claim any costs, it would be the medical certificate, it would be a retirement annuity contribution certificate, it might be a donation to a public benefit organisation, a charity, which I want to claim as a tax deduction. I'd bring all those documents to SARS, I'd sit with an agent, they'd help me complete the form, and I would sign. Now that's the one. The other side is on e-filing. Now people are very scared of e-filing.
They say it's not user-friendly.
Well, they're scared of it, but people forget we've got an agent on the other side. You can push a button that says help you e-file, and that enables you to go and get an agent to sit with you, and it's as though they're sitting with you and they go through your return, holding your hand through the process, ultimately you pushing the submit button. So those are the key things. The other thing, I think, just to help people, our agents are there, and we've also got a new service which I think we started last year, that if you don't want to hold, you don't have airtime on your cell phone, you can ask us to call you back. You won't lose your place in the queue, and we'll call you back as well.
I've definitely used that option. So, gentlemen, there's an SMS that came in here, and he says, last year I was audited by SARS, even though I did file twice. Who can answer that?
It's a bit of an open-ended question. I don't know, Eric, if you'd have an answer.
Look, I mean, SARS has got what they call a risk engine. And that, in a way, is the one that determines when a person should be audited or not. So it kicks out, a certain return, for example. This one must be flagged for auditing. It may be out of certain things, the way it is set, but it's no human factor involved there. So this risk engine does that. So, yes, a person will be audited under those
What does it mean when you're being audited, Mark? What, have you failed to submit something on time, or they think that you're not submitting the correct amounts that you...
Well,
what is
to build on what Eric is highlighting, the risk engine. Our risk engine is governed by a lot of data that we're receiving from people. So we get your employers give us information. All the banks are giving us all details of your bank accounts. So we would know you should have declared interest of X amount. If you don't declare it, we would identify you.
So you're like Big Brother that's silently watching.
We are simply doing our job. Coming back to what our job is, make sure you pay your right tax. That's all we're doing. But essentially, it identifies it for an audit. What the audit does is I give all my documents to you as SARS employee, and they go through it and they check, does it match your declaration? If it doesn't match, we make a correction.
Okay.
But the biggest lot of complaints, if I may handle that, comes from people failing to respond to provide the documents on time. We see it a lot.
Well, I mean, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it has happened that some people present their documents and they are requested to present the very same documents over and over again.
It's not acceptable.
So it does happen when you present the documents and either they're misplaced. I don't know. We don't know. But and a person may have proof they have presented such documents. So that's a service failure, and we need to address those kind of things.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's take our first call on the line. Sis Mandisa from Queenstown. Siyakwamukela sis, umbuzo noma umbono.
Hi, Susie.
Hello, sis wami.
Umbuzo wami ngowabane?
Yebo,
Ngiqeshwe mna ngo-2008.
Yebo,
Ndaqala kwenza submissions zami ku-SARS ngo-2009 after a year.
yes.
Then a few months after, ndafolelwa ngu-SARS that I'm owing u-SARS imali yoba ndikhe ndaya phesheya ndinomntana wa-paralyzed kwi-medical aid of which that has never happened. And on top of it all, kuthiwa ndaye ndaclaima mna for ezo zinto zoyi-2 and andizange. What I remember is a SARS consultant came at my workplace wafuna izinto so kwa-SARS ufuna izinto zethu zonke RIP5 medical aid ne-certificates zonke zobana unayo i-pension or gratuity or whatever. I gave everything that I had.
Sis Mandisi, usebenza kwi-company Ntombi?
Ndisebenza no kwi-department kwa-education.
Oh, okay. So kwafika i-SARS official yacela ama-documents nawasubmitha?
Yes,
Okay.
everything.
Okay, so njengoba bethi you are owing after you went overseas, did you go overseas when?
No, I'd never.
You'd never gone
Never.
overseas. Okay, so okay, kwesithando sami. Alright, qhubeka nombuzo wakho Ntombi.
Never paralyzed.
Oh, nomntanakho khange abe paralyzed. Okay, qhubeka nombuzo wakho Ntombi.
And a few months later, ndafumana ile mbizela ye-court in East London. I went there. Kwathiwa mandithethe uba ndenza ntoni na kwa-SARS. No, I submitted online. The thing is, kwafika enye igayi ne eyayisuka kwa-SARS. Yafika yathi uzasikreyithela ii-pins nee-passwords and everything because we knew nothing about the code. We knew nothing about the computers. So wasikreyithela emails, wasikreyithela ii-passwords, wasenzela. Then wathi safumana imali. Ndayifumana imali.
Sis Mandisi, uke wazama mhlawumbe ukuya e-SARS wayozama ukuthola usizo, bathini khona?
Ndiyile kwa-SARS.
Bathini pha?
Kodwa mandiye eMonti. Befikile apha eDudu. Kodwa mandiye eMonti. Ndaye eMonti. Kodwa eMonti mna ndifumene imali engaki-13,000.
Okay, ke sonto sami.
That was a shock to me because ndandifumene mna imali eyayi-7 point something.
Okay, ke
ndandibhatele kuyo futhi ne-100
Sis Mandisi, awuhlale lapho i-team yethu izothatha imininingwane yakho khona bezokhona ukuthi obhuti mebek-addressa la usheshe uthole impendulo. Mbukeli, we're going to take another quick ad break. Sizobuya nje ngempendulo kaSis Mandisi, ungayindawo. Welcome back, Mbukeli. We're still talking tax matters, and of course, my guests are Advocate Eric Mkhawane from the Office of the Tax Ombudsman, Senaino Mr. Mark Kingon ovela kwi-Office lentela phecelezi the South African Revenue Office. For advice, your questions, your comments, please call us 011-714-6918 or 714-6919. Ungas-email nje ku-consumer@sabc.co.za. Siyatholakala futhi lapha ku-Facebook na ku-Twitter. Ngizofunda ama-tweets enu, but before that, the gentleman want to address Mandisi's query. I mean, what a shocking incident. Are we smelling some sort of fraudulent occurrings here?
Yes.
What do you think happened, Eric?
It happens a lot. And some of the complaints that end up with our office are similar to this. What happens normally, or under those circumstances, people approach taxpayers who they know, they don't know much. And before they even look at the documents, they'll tell them, you'll get a refund. So, I mean, you cannot guarantee a refund without even looking at the IRP5 or looking at the supporting documents. The moment a person tells you that you will get you a refund without looking at the documents, you must smell a rat. So what happens then? They go and include, I mean, in this case, I mean, saying that, they claim some medicals, it sounds like it. When they talk of a paralyzed child.
Yes.
So, and
also
when there isn't.
Yes.
So people need to be wary of such. And there is also a way to deal with it. I mean, you can always check whether this person who claims to be a practitioner is a real practitioner indeed and is a person that really one should rely on.
But how do you check them, though? I mean, if this person comes in and says, okay, cool, I've got the laptop, we're going to start creating your profiles and
Alicia,
pins.
I feel terrible for this type of case because we're seeing it time and time again. We've committed, we're going to try and sort out this specific example. But what does a person like this do? Firstly, I think we must deal with people promising a refund, as Eric said, where they haven't even looked at the papers. The second thing, if a person says they want a percentage of the refund, they are fraudulent. A tax practitioner cannot charge a percentage of a refund. That is not, they can charge a fee for completing the form. They can't say, well, give me 20% of the refund due. Because what they do is they artificially inflate figures, and then in the end, like Mandisa sitting in Queenstown, she's sitting with a liability because somebody else has caused the fraud. Be careful of people. If you want to validate if it's a genuine practitioner, you can check on our website and you can call our contact center. We can validate. There's a practice number that can be validated. We can also ask Mandisa, we do have mobile units that travel to Queenstown from time to time and visit one of those offices. It would be difficult for her to get to the local office. But be careful of people promising something that seems too good to be true. It will be too good to be true. That's really what we're wanting to ask people to be aware of. Between Eric's office and my office, we're going to try and resolve Mandisa's question and deal with it. For other people in a similar situation, bring it to our attention. Let's see what we can do. And we've got a whole process dealing with this type of fraud that does occur. But don't give your personal details to somebody. If you've got an e-filing PIN, don't give it to the people. You must keep that to yourself because that is the start of fraud. So that's something for people to be aware of.
Yes, but Eric.
Because what is even worse in Mandisa's situation, SARS will go after Mandisa because it will be taken as if she's the one who actually completed the form and now she's liable. And she can't say, I didn't do it myself, and you know.
Yes.
So unless such facts come to us,
yes, Advocate.
Or even to SARS for that matter, we may not be able to understand the situation.
Maybe Mark, clarify, how do you ever send our tax practitioners to go to specific places to fill up, to ask people to fill up? How does it work?
We don't send tax practitioners. That's a separate independent people. We do send out people to assist. We've got mobile units. We've got 21 of them that go right across the country. We go to large employers, but we're not tax practitioners. We are SARS representatives. We are employed by SARS to do work, and we'll assist clients. And we've got a whole team that does that. We don't have tax practitioners. Tax practitioners are people outside who do work for a fee, but not a percentage of refund, because that causes the malicious claim of
vicious cycle of fraud. All right, okay. Sis Mandisa bayasho ke obhudela studio bathi bazozama ukuthi badile nendaba yakho, sinazi inamba zakho sisi, siyabonga ukuthi usazisa. Ake sibheke ukuthi nithini lapha ku Facebook. Aphiwe amaxaba swart boy maka anje uthi Eshma, mna I need more clarity on paying tax and le mali ityalwayo iyaphi, and why is it that even nanxa uyofuna umsebenzi you have to have a tax number? Without it you won't be hired. Do you want to take that one quick?
Alicia, I'm not happy with this because we have reminded employers there is no need for a person to have a tax number at the date they are hired. Because once they are hired, the employer can go online and get a tax number for that person. There is no need. And we have been reminding people, and we see queues of people, specifically, interestingly, in Cape Town, where they're queuing to get a tax number to get an interview for a job. And that is not acceptable. And employers should not be turning away prospective employees based on the fact that they don't have a tax number. It's really, we're not happy with that. Maybe that's something we need to put our heads together and see. We have communicated, but maybe there's something more we can do, Eric, to communicate this.
Well, I mean, it's obviously education.
Absolutely.
If we identify such issues, I mean, I think such people should be addressed.
All right. Let's see what more people are saying on Facebook. Songezo Adonis says, what are the benefits for paying tax as a person or as a business? And then he says, there's too much paperwork when applying for tax. And 3, SARS have a good service, but it consumes time when you are at the services. Mark?
I suppose I'll have to comment on this one. Look, the benefits of paying tax, I think, is we see it all around us. And we have tried to elaborate in terms of many of our adverts where we see direct benefits of people paying taxes. We see lots of services being rendered. We see healthcare. I see in the schools my kids are at, the benefit that they achieve through the paying of taxes. That's why we do it. It's the right thing to do. There's no question in my mind. The issue of registration for tax, we understand that there are certain onerous parts, but we have made it easier. Recently we rolled out with the Companies Office, the CIPC, that you get an automatic income tax number when you register a company at the CIPC. We've got a joint process and we give a tax number. The challenge comes in getting the other tax numbers, a VAT number, and Eric will probably get those complaints. There is quite a bit of paperwork. The trouble is, in any area where there's potential fraud, there has to be paperwork and checks and balances to make sure that...
So it's for their own good, that
ultimately,
whole amount of paperwork, mbukelo uyezona ukuthi kumele ngempela ukuthi lawo maphepha othi wena maningi kakhulu and the process ikuphathisa ikhanda ayadingeka so that kuzopreventeka ifraud. But Mzwandile eDurban sakwamukela Nsizwa, siyabonga ukubamba ulayini, besibhizi sicela usibuze umbuzo nombeka umbono.
Yebo, sanibona njani?
Siyaphila bhuti wami.
Yebo, ukhuluma noMzwandile, siyabonga ngohlelo olubalulekile nisipha lona. Actually nami ngisebenza under i-broker.
Yebo,
but manje indlela enzakalayo, indlela engitaxwa ngayo I reflect mengiya ngikhasazi. Naye bengifuna ukuthola mhlawumbe njengomsebenzi yibi into lesingaziyo ukuthi indlela esitaxwa ngayo iyafana, because we happen to have i-singular tax number sabasebenzi, saba ne-tax number efanayo. Esibanjela ngabo kubanjela futhi ngendlela ehlukene, so like asazi or i-labor broker esibambela i-tax or ibanjwa direct from SARS. Then if ngiyakasazi then kuvela ngazithi nje angitaxwa ngale ndlela engitaxwa ngayo emsebenzini.
Okay, bhuti Mzwandile, ngizocela nawe ukuthi wenze njengosisi Mandisi usishiyele inamba yakho khona sobona ukuthi maybe khona ukuthi obhuti Mark nobhuti Eric bakuthinte bangakuthola kuphi, yezwa Nsizwa? All right. Okay, bhuti wami ubuke nje umabona kude wakho. We're going to take a very quick ad break. Siyabuya khona manje. We're still taking your calls like 011-714-6918 or 714-6919. Email yethu ayikakashintshi nje ithi consumer@sabc.co.za. Usithole futhi lapha ku Facebook na ku Twitter. Let's address Mzwandile's call in Durban. What do you think happened there, Advocate? Is this some of the cases that you get Lokuzan office lakho?
Well, it's some of the questions, some of the complaints that come to our office may have some elements like this. What happens at times, somebody loses an ID, and then that ID, subsequent to that, a person registers, maybe then there's an IRP5 that is issued under that ID, and so, I mean, people commit fraud out of that. But unfortunately, the person who's a victim is the one that suffers at the end of the day. You know, an ID number, I mean, a tax number is just the same as an ID. You cannot share an ID number with anybody. So the tax number should not be shared at all. So we have had situations where the taxpayer lost an ID, ended up in somebody's hands. The person registered for tax, did the fraud, and SARS eventually came after the person who's a victim and saying, no, you are the one who's owing us, so they ran to us, we assisted them. But obviously we'll need supporting documents, we need affidavits and the like. And in this case, it looks like there's something strange. You can't have the same tax numbers. You know,
and it sounds like it's a group of them.
Yes.
Should we think it's the broker there, Mark?
The key thing, though, this is ID theft in some form.
Yes.
And the first thing is he must go to the police and lay a complaint. That's the most important. He must lay a complaint that somebody's utilizing my ID. That's really what's happened.
Yes, that's
and then approach SARS, and then we'd have to work on it from there.
But under this circumstances, I think SARS needs to look at this matter. separately.
We'll see if we can resolve it, but obviously we get many people having this where there's suddenly somebody else using my tax number in some other place. That person's income is combined with mine and I'm suddenly being held to account. We've got a process to deal with that, but the starting point is there's been a theft of an ID outside SARS environment. And we must lay the complaint at police with regards to that, and then we'll have a further process internally to deal with that. But we'll try and resolve this gentleman's affairs.
Mark, does SARS have any, link between the brokers that do taxes for individuals?
This is a very funny thing, and that's where I'm very unclear, because a broker, if he's submitting on behalf of other people and he's not a registered practitioner, he's committing a criminal offence. So the broker has to be registered if he's doing tax affairs on behalf of people. He needs to be registered as a practitioner with a registered controlling body. And there's a whole host, I think there's 11 or 12 of them, that they can be registered at. If they're not registered there, it's a criminal offence to submit a return for a fee on behalf of somebody else. Now, it might not be at a fee. We don't know the facts. But we'll investigate and check this one out.
All right, Mzwandile Nsizwa, I hope uyezwa-ke nawe yakhe indaba bathi bazoyidingida. So uyithathe noma i-private number bekufonela ngayo ke sithathe uNjabulo from eBrakpan. Siyakwamukela Nsizwa, umbuzo noma umbono?
Yes, sisashiya ngiyabula.
Yebo bhuti.
Khona sisi iyasebenza facilitator and I'm getting the commission. So ngizothola kusibonela ngizothola i-commission ye-2 million nge-month end of July. Now bengifuna ukwazi ke ukuba how much am I liable to pay uSARS in terms of tax? 2, must I pay that tax after my expenditure or before I do my expenses on that 2 million?
Okay, bhuti Njabulo, before uhamba uthi umsebenzi wakho uthola ukhola i-commission kuphela, una basic salary?
No, just I'm getting my money on commission.
Oh, okay. So ufuna ukwazi ukuthi how do you file for ilokhuzana tax return lapho?
Yes, for instance, this coming month end, I'm going to get a commission of 2 million.
Okay.
I would like to know as to how much must I pay SARS in terms of the percentage as to my commission, and must I pay that percentage after my
expenditure? Oh,
yes.
okay. Siyabonga kakhulu bhuti Njabulo. He sounds like a very responsible citizen. Hey, Mark?
We're always very happy to hear people who want to pay tax voluntarily. But Alicia, I think commission agents have got a specific framework.
Yes.
If they receive a commission from an employer, it is subject to tax just like you and I, unless they get a specific percentage directive to reduce the percentage because they've got certain expenditures which the gentleman reflected that he wants to claim. Now, we do issue those type of directives which allows for a lower percentage tax to be deducted. But ultimately, when you submit your return, you have to have proof of those expenditures to offset against the commission income. And it could be car, it could be stationery. There's a whole host of expenditures that he may have to generate that income. And he can claim those on the tax return as a tax deduction. And whatever the net is subject to the tax rate. Maybe, Alicia, this is a good time for us just to reflect. Income tax rate isn't a flat rate like VAT. It's a progressive tax. So if I earn below 73,000, it's 0%. If I'm earning probably 500,000, 600,000, 700,000, it's 41%. So there's a sliding scale depending how much we earn. So we couldn't tell this gentleman exactly what tax he will finally pay.
Okay.
It will be determined being the net of the income and the expenditure.
So after the expenditure,
After
basically.
the expenditure.
Okay, all
but
right.
he must have proof. And I think, Alicia, that's what I really want to emphasize today.
In a related matter there, Mark, on our questions on our SMS line, he says that I registered a business. It's not necessarily making an income. Am I still liable for tax?
You are liable to submit a return. We don't tax below when you're making a loss, but you've still got to submit a return.
Okay.
No, we're not that mean, Alicia. Just if I have a business and my turnover is less than 70,000, I'm not going to be paying tax, but I must submit a return.
All right, very quickly before we go, there's an SMS, another one that says, why is it that when a foreigner submits their tax returns, it takes much longer?
Eric, maybe you're looking to me.
You need to answer.
I need to answer. Firstly, and the reason being simply that an IOP5 gets pre-populated, it gets brought into the return that you submit. One of the challenges is with a person who hasn't got a local identity number, it is difficult to provide that matching that we know the IOP5 is being brought in. So it's not brought in. They then complete it. We have to do extra work to make sure that the right thing is allowed. And generally speaking, they would be subject to a review or an audit because we haven't been able to match in our data that is the IOP5 that's correct. That's the real reason. We also don't automatically give, with employers, it's very difficult when there's just a passport number to register somebody because a passport number changes every 5 to 7 years. It's not like an ID number that's fixed. So it's a question of identification to make sure that it's the right person.
All right, well, I hope upendulekile lapho. We're going to take a very quick ad break. We're back with more shortly after this. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Mbukela ukhumbuleke sesothatha ikhola yokugcina before sivala ingcingo. Ngothi ngiphuthume ngiye lapha ku Facebook ngizwe ukuthi nithini. Uzazi Mkhoba uyabuza ukuthi will I get a refund with an IOP5 from public servant jobs which were contractual basis and I pay tax? Very quickly, Mark.
Just very quickly, if I've only got an income, tax withheld, and that's all I've got, it's highly unlikely that I'll get a refund.
Okay.
Because the employer deducted correctly. Unless I go claim something, then there would be a refund.
All right. Zazi siyathemba ukuthi uzwile lapho Nsizwa Mduduzi Maseko uthi, hi guys, I used to work for a bank and I lost my job in 2013. I got my pension, then invested ngoba the financial advisor told me that I won't pay tax if I do that, even when I want to use it within a year. But I got taxed when I withdrew the money. I only worked for 3 months since then. Now I'm not working. Angifanelanga yini to submit nami? Should I not submit?
Well, very importantly, a withdrawal from a pension fund is subject to tax. There's certain rates that apply to that. So when I pull my money out of a pension fund, there is tax applicable. If I keep it and I put it into another fund, in other words, I leave my employer because I've lost my job, I take it out of there and I put it into what they call a preservation fund.
Yes.
Then there is no tax payable. But there are certain amounts that you can draw down on without tax, but there are rules, Alicia. There's too little time in this time to go into that. They can approach our offices. We've got the information. But from the information on the Facebook thing, I think it's correct that they did pay tax, but it depends on the facts.
Oh, yeah, well, unfortunately, bekumele kukhokhwe lapho bhuti wami ngebhadi. Mthiyeni, our last caller from Gauteng. Uthi nje qabaqaba Nsizwa, sesifuna ukuthi sihambe kodwa before lokho sizokuphendula. Uthini wena?
Yebo sanibona, ngibonga kakhulu mama Alisha nabahlonishwa.
Yebo bhuti.
Kunemali yami lapha enganikezwa inkampani engango 20,000 rand surplus. Imali lena amaqedwe kunginika inkampani i-tax yayithatha yonke i-SARS. Ngabe ngithole ngi-cent kodwa nabhizinisi anginalutho, angazi ukuthi kwenzeka kanjani.
Bathi bayithatheleni bhuti, bathi mhlawumbe ubukolota i-tax before, bathi yini ama-reasons?
Bengikade ngisebenza ekhampanini mina, ngaphuma imali zami bayithatha yonke. Kwase kuba nemali-ke eceleni ephuma engango 20,000 emva kwesikhathi. Ekuthiwa i-surplus, aphindanga ngathola ngi-cent bayithatha yonke. Bathi ngiyakolota, ngithi ngikolota ngoba anginabhizinisi, anginalutho.
Okay, ke bhuti Mtheni, siyabonga kakhulu.
I think the question is who took the money?
Who took the money? Yeah, he says,
Yes.
well,
Is it
SARS.
SARS?
He says SARS took the money. And they claim that I think he got this money. It was called a surplus from a company. He used to work at a certain company. And he says he was not owing any tax according to him because he was paying tax all along when he was employed, Mark?
Yeah, you know, Alicia, the tax is complex. And to respond, I don't have sufficient information. I'd love to help him. We'll try and assist him. If he doesn't come right, he can contact either of our offices and the details are available. But I would suggest that we're going to give him a call. It doesn't make sense. He speaks of a surplus distribution, which sounds like a pension fund distribution, but it doesn't quite make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
He hasn't got sufficient information. I think, for me, the most important, we would like people to be aware. Number one, know what your tax affairs are. So if there is a debt, you should know about it. So by the sounds of this 20,000 taken, he should have known he owed tax. If he didn't know, yes, there's question marks.
Because I'm asking, and he says he
doesn't
wasn't
know.
aware that he was
doesn't
owing
sound
any
right.
tax. Very quickly.
Yes, under those circumstances, I mean, those are some of the type of complaints sometimes
that he
we
can
get.
come to you.
Because somewhere the communication breakdown. Maybe he doesn't receive an assessment or he doesn't get anything, and suddenly SARS is on the person and taking the money. So we receive those kind. They can either office, but they can also come
Mark,
to
your
our
closing
office.
comments very quickly.
Very, very quickly. People must remember the filing dates, and I think the most important date being the 25th of November. That's the most important one. And use the channels that are available, whether it be us or the Ombud, but just try firstly our contact centre or our branch operations.
See what they can
we are
do.
there to try and help. And really, we are not the ogre that people try and make us out. We really want to do what's right and make sure people don't pay more than they have to.
Gentlemen, I wish I could give you more time, but you're going to text me. I can't, unfortunately. Putimtheni siyacela uhambe e-office le ombuds noma uye khona SARS. Unfortunately, Mbukeli, that is where we end today's show. Siyabonga kakhulu to our studio guests for being with us today. Ngithanda futhi ukubonga nani babukeli phela ngokuthi nibe nathi. Kuze kube manje. Join us again next week Friday for another live consumer affairs discussion. Ukhumbula impinda yohlelo lethu la ngomsombuluko from 12 midday from you Alish Ntombi yakajali and the whole team. Nisale kahle ama details alolu hlela khona lapha escreenini.